Hello, this is a homily for the 25th Sunday of the year. We start with the reading from the Book of Wisdom, and Wisdom is a comparatively late book in the Old Testament, and it has a very sophisticated understanding of the conflict that arises when anyone brings something good, something valuable, something precious into the world. Just quoting from the Book of Wisdom, the wicked say, "Let us beset the just one, because he is obnoxious to us." This is the whole religion of hate that we're seeing today in the world. He sets himself against our doings, reproaches us for transgressions of the law. The just one is literally just, and consequently can very quickly see the faults in those who are transgressing the law. So they want to put him to the test. If the just one be the Son of God, and that attribution that he is in fact Son of God because he is just, will return again in the New Testament reading. God will defend him and deliver him from the hand of his foes. Now, the religion of hate continues. With revilement and torture, let us put the just one to the test, that we may have proof of his gentleness and try his patience. Let us condemn him to a shameful death, for according to his own words, God will take care of him. So there are really two levels here. We can see both that the just one, what is said about the just one can be applied to Jesus, the coming just one, some, 200 years after the time of this writing. And we can also apply it to the real battle that just people have in this world because they come up against this hatred literally all the time. The psalm picks up this theme. Haughty men have risen up against me, the ruthless seek my life. And here's the punchline: they set not God before their eyes. The world is ordered by God. The ones who hate are literally loose in this world, and they're not following the ordering of the world according to God's way of seeing things. Behold, God is my helper, the Lord sustains my life. So again, the psalm is a hymn about the just one who realizes the ordinary everyday situation of the one who is just, and yet knows the Lord will help him. The second reading, which is obviously the New Testament reading, comes from the letter of James, James chapter 3, and here we have James preaching to his flock. Where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder and every foul practice. No surprise. But the next line, but the wisdom from above is first of all pure. We just read from the Book of Wisdom, and this is, James is referring to literally the knowledge of the world that comes from above, the knowledge of how to behave in this world that comes from above. It isn't based on selfish ambition. It's not based on jealousy. It is quite simply then peaceable, gentle, compliant, full of mercy and good fruits. This is the non-toxic life of the one who lives by the wisdom of God. Question: where do the wars, where do the conflicts among you come from? Is it not from your passions? You covet but do not possess, you kill and envy, but you cannot obtain, you ask but you do not receive. Because you're asking for the wrong things, basically. because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. And we're beginning to get what is called technically an anthropology, an understanding of human beings taught to us by God. James is not new in this. This kind of hierarchical structure of existence is already pretty clear way earlier in the Old Testament. And what we essentially have is a mind, and this is where those who hate kind of lose it. They don't use their minds for what they're supposed to use them for. And this mind is open to the wisdom of God. That's what it is created for. And below the mind, in terms of the hierarchy of our existence, we have our passions and our bodily functions. And each one of these bodily functions are supposed to be ordered by our passions, passions ordered by what we know from the wisdom of God, and the wisdom of God orders our minds so that we think the right things. We're not operating in hate mode. Continuing then with the readings, we have the Gospel from Mark chapter 9, and essentially there are two parts to this Gospel. The first part is Jesus teaching his disciples and telling them the Son of Man is to be handed over to men. Important that, because that's where the hate is, and they will kill him. 3 days after his death, the Son of Man will rise. In other words, their hatred will literally come to nothing. The Son of Man will rise again. They've taken his life. God gives him back his life. And the transformation that happens is from hatred to eternal life. And God is able to achieve that in us. If we too, like we've heard in James, like we've heard in the Book of Wisdom, if we literally face up to the struggles of the religion of hate that we meet all around us in this world. So anyhow, the disciples were afraid to question him. So then he begins to question them when they get to the town where they are going. And it's kind of embarrassing because he asks them, what were you talking about? You obviously weren't talking to me. So they'd been discussing among themselves on the way who was the greatest. A more pathetic goal, I can't imagine. They're following the Son of God, and that's what's worrying them. They just obviously haven't connected yet. And so he sat down, called the 12, and said to them, if anyone wishes to be first, he shall be last of all and servant of all. Here is again this compliancy, this humility that we heard about in the Book of Wisdom and in the letter of St. James. Taking a child, he placed it in their midst. He said to them, whoever receives a child such as this in my name receives me. And we've got to appreciate that the church has this wonderful, absolutely wonderful, long history of taking care of children for millennia, literally. The fact that we are now, in the last 30 years, getting a bad name from the actions of some of our members doesn't take away for that long history of caring for young people. But carrying on, whoever receives a child such as this in my name, that is the kicker. That's the key to understanding how we as Christian community receive children. And whoever receives this one in my name receives me, Jesus Christ. And that should put a certain moral structure around how we deal with children and how we respect them, because, my God, we respect Jesus Christ, and this child is Jesus Christ to me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but the one who sent me. And so we are recognizing that in our ordinary, everyday actions, remember he talked about being last of all and servant of all, this great humility, this great notion of service. And the church has an absolutely immense history of service, from hospitals, orphanages, universities, building monasteries that become dynamic centers of life for their whole area, and it just goes on and on and on. And if we look today to those institutions, and then also to the absolutely phenomenal institutions that we have that are essentially newer, like Catholic Charities, just to take one very good example, or Project Rachel, and the list goes on and on, we can glory in this incredible history of service of the church. And that's something that mustn't be lost sight of as we deal with the evil of some of our members. That is going to be an ongoing question for probably the next 2 decades. But the point of the matter is, there are tens of thousands of remarkable Catholics doing great service to the poor, to the weak, to those families that are coming apart, to those institutions that are needing help, like hospitals and all these different groups, because that's what we do as we serve through these dozens and dozens of institutions, and we'll find them by the bucket load wherever we go. As we serve the world through these institutions, we are serving Christ. We are seeing Christ in the poor and the divorced and the hungry and the weak and those who don't have any rights, those who are illegal immigrants, and so on and so on and so on. The list is just endless. So let us see the two levels. On the one hand, this literal struggle that we are, if we're going to be Christian, we're going to face that struggle. It's not going away. There's no ironic, quietist way to live the Christian life. Let's get used to that. But the other side of it is that because of the way Christ has injected himself into the world, by being humble and servant of all, we are serving Christ in the thousands of ways that Catholics have found over the millennia. And let us be proud of that. Let us be rejoicing that. And let us respect the fact that most often the finance that we give in to various organizations is used really, really, really well. And thank God for that too. Have a nice day.